Thank you for joining us here at Lowry Sports Rhetoric. I am your host, Nathan.
I'm Damon.
And today we're going to do the Seattle Seahawks, continuing in the NFC West. Last year in 2021, they were 7-10, fourth in the NFC West, and they did not make the playoffs.
Probably going to repeat that this year.
Probably. They were 20th in yards offensively, 16 in points offensively, 28 in yards allowed defensively, and 12th in points allowed defensively. Their GM is John Schneider. He's been there since 2010. That's 11 years. And the coach, Pete Carroll, he has also been there since 2010. That's 11 years. He's 112 and 73 in his record.
You got to say both of those guys have done a good job in their time, right?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah. It was under Schneider that they did the Legion of Boom too, as well, right?
Yeah, he's been there the whole time Carroll's there.
Sure, that makes sense.
So he came in, he brought in Carroll, and they've had a good run since that marriage.
Yeah, I think that he does a good job. I think the last couple of years has kind of been dipping down a little bit. It's interesting to see. I think it's interesting to see when they start clearing up cap space, the way that they take things and where they go. So
yeah, I think the interesting thing, as we mentioned in other videos, our Uncle Tom is a big Seahawks fan. At one point, he was a season ticket holder. So I kind of talk about the Seahawks with him. And I know for the last couple of years, he's felt like maybe it was time for a rebuild. So maybe they held on to that. They had that group that was in a Super Bowl window, and maybe they tried to hold on to that window a little too long. You can maybe criticize them for that. Now they're in the rebuild. They'll get a chance with this rebuild. And then we'll see where things go. But
sure.
If they don't rebuild it right, then maybe it's time to move on. But I think they've definitely earned the right to have a second chance at this rebuild.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Okay. We're going to get into free agent additions. There's not a whole lot here. They didn't do a whole lot. The Uchenna Nwasu, linebacker from the Chargers. I'm sure I mispronounced that name. Quentin Jefferson, defensive tackle from Vegas. Austin Blythe, guard from Kansas City. Artie Burns, cornerback from Chicago. Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver from Chicago.
All right, so I was weighing in on the Bears guys. Artie Burns is a guy we brought in hoping to be a slot corner, good nickelback. And he didn't really live up to the hype. I know he was a former first-round pick, and so there was a lot of hope with the Bears fans. He did okay. I think he's serviceable. A team rebuilding, he'll probably do okay, but he's not, upper echelon nickelback in my mind.
Sure.
And Goodwin is probably just a special teams player, especially with the wide receivers they already have in place. Goodwin's probably just a special teams player.
Okay, and then Justin Coleman, cornerback from Miami. All right, their free agent losses. We got Bobby Wagner, inside linebacker to the Rams. I think that's a little bit of a hit. Obviously he's a good player.
Yeah. We talk about they're in a rebuild mode and they were holding on to the old guard too long. He's kind of represents the old guard, right? So he's
still a good player.
He's good. I think he still has, not that he's washed up and done. I think he still has a few years left in him.
I think he went to the right team that fits with where he is in his career.
Sure. I think, we talked about this with other teams too. There's certain teams when they're in that rebuild mode, their window doesn't fit the player's window anymore. We'll be talking about that when we get to my Bears team. So I think that's a case in this. There's going to be a couple guys on this list that qualifies for they're kind of aged out of the window that you're on. And so they're on a new window now. Wagner wasn't going to fit that window. By the time they're ready to compete for titles, he's going to be done. So it made sense for them to let him walk and not pay him a bunch of money to just be in the way of the future guy.
All right, we got DJ Reed, safety, the Jets, to the Jets, sorry. Jared Everett, tight end to the Chargers. Again, I think that's another example of a guy.
Well, they also, we'll talk about in a minute, they got a new tight end coming in that I think is probably better than Everett, honestly.
Sure, absolutely. And then Jamarco Jones, tackle to Tennessee. Rashad Green, defensive end to Houston. Kerry Hyder, defensive end to San Francisco. Ethan Pokic, guard to Cleveland. Blessian Austin, cornerback to Denver. Carlos Dunlap, defensive end to Kansas City. And then Gavin Heslop, cornerback to the Giants. After Bobby Wagner, it's not like... I guess that there is some loss there.
Dunlap's a decent...
Yeah, he's a little older.
Decent end, but you're right. So that's, as a rotational end, it doesn't make sense for him to stay with the Seahawks. No. It makes more sense for him to go to Kansas City.
And like you said, with Everett, they upgraded there.
Yeah.
That's pretty decent there. Like I said, they didn't do a whole lot bringing in, That's interesting. They did a little bit more, but not even a whole lot of losses either. So.
Yeah, and I think the guys that they brought in were more just for depth's sake and maybe just have some veterans in the locker room more than. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're in rebuild mode.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Trades. We got Russell Wilson to Broncos. This is what they got out of it. 23rd first round. Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 23 second round, 22 first round, 22 second round, and 22 fifth round. That's a haul.
Yeah, so you get a quarterback that may or may not be your starter this year. You get a tight end that I think upgraded over Everett. And you get a defensive player that I know when the trade first went down, a lot of the Broncos players commented on Twitter like, oh, not him. They wanted him to stay in the locker room. So I think that tells you got a good locker room piece out of the defensive player. You upgrade your tight end, and you got a quarterback that you can at least, like, you're hoping maybe you can get more out of him than the Broncos did, and he can be your guy. If not, he can at least be a placeholder until you find your guy.
Absolutely.
And then on top of all of that, you get 5 draft picks, 2 first rounders, 2 second. But, for a guy that was demanding to leave when it was probably time to move on from him, I think that's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good package you got from him. And I think it was obvious it was necessary. They either needed to move on from Wilson or they needed to move on from Carroll. That's been obvious for a couple of years now. And, like I said, I think I know at least some of the Seahawks fans, because of talking to my uncle, I know at least some of the Seahawks fans were for moving on from Russell and seeing what it looked like if you built around a new quarterback, especially considering how much money he gets paid and how much money he was going to want to get paid. I think that's a good haul for a moving on kind of situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that they definitely, like you said, just capitalized completely on that trade, and it all made sense from every angle and every side. And I do agree. I think even a couple years ago, of course, I was wanting to trade him to the Colts, but.
Well, and here's the thing too, right? So we'll talk about it when we get to Locke. But if Locke ends up being even just a good game manager or a good quarterback, if they end up getting what the Broncos were hoping they were getting when they drafted him in the first round, then this is going to be a quick rebuild. It's not going to be like a 3 or 4 year rebuild. It's going to be quick, I think.
We'll see how that goes.
We'll talk about that.
All right, and we're on to the draft. Okay, round 1, number 9, Charles Cross, offensive tackle out of Mississippi State. I think this was a no-brainer, can't miss on this guy. Charles Cross looks like he's going to be a stud.
Yeah, so we talked about it in our post-draft recap. We had the Seahawks as one of our elite drafts, one of our top 6 drafts. And he is, obviously, being the first pick, he's the star of it. But there's a lot of good names you're about to name off. And yeah, he's definitely the biggest complaint I think the Seahawks fans have had ever since Wilson got paid. They have struggled to maintain an offensive line in front of them. And this is starting, your building block with your left tackle. That's, one of the better tackles in the draft.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Round 2, number 40, Boye Mafe, outside linebacker from Minnesota. I know that he's a really good linebacker.
Yeah, he's a player. He's a playmaker.
Yeah, and he stood out on a team that was actually a little difficult to watch last year. And
well, what's interesting, I'm in the middle of doing my college prep for my college fantasy. When you look at Minnesota's defense, they were actually really good last year, and he was a key piece to the reason why they were really good last year.
I got you.
Like, he really was.
Yeah, I remember him standing out, though. Whenever I would watch, I definitely knew who that guy is.
And that defense was a lot better than I think you would think.
Yeah.
And he was a big reason for it.
Yeah,
so.
I know he had a lot of really good plays. Very enjoyable.
This next guy.
Round 2, number 41, Ken Walker III, running back out of Michigan State.
I love this kid so much.
Absolutely.
He can make people miss in the backfield. He can hit home runs with the running game. He can catch the ball at the backfield, be a part of the passing game. He's one of those guys that can turn 2 missed tackles or make 2 people miss their tackles and then turn that into a 60-yard touchdown like that.
Yeah, he made up a good portion of that offense last year.
Oh, he was fun to watch. He's electric. So
Absolutely.
I think, so this is like the extra pick that they got. Well, so they had given up their first round pick for Adams, right? So you get the building block on the offensive line, and Walker are 2 of the pieces that you add to those other pieces.
Yeah.
That's what you got for Wilson. I think that's great value for Wilson right there.
Yeah, me too. Round 3, number 72, Aram Lucas, offensive tackle out of Washington State, throwing more people on that line, hoping that guy works out.
Well, so what's interesting here too, right? So you put him with. I think the thing that stands out here with him and Cross together is they both come from air raid type offenses. So if you're getting 2 tackles from air raid type offenses, maybe this is a sign. And Walker's a guy that can line up in a single back. He doesn't need a fullback. He can line up in a single back situation, and he can catch the ball in the backfield. Maybe this is a sign that they're looking to go in a new direction with their offense.
Air it out.
Air it out a little bit more, which I think would suit Drew Lock.
Yes.
So I think that's an interesting. The fact that they drafted 2 guys from air raid offenses at tackle, and you're going to be building around that going forward, I think is a very interesting sign.
Round 3, number 72. I'm sorry, we already just did that one. Round 4, number 109, Kobe Bryant, cornerback out of Cincinnati.
One of my favorite corners in this draft.
Absolutely.
And then the next pick is actually another one of my favorite corners from this draft. So to me, they really did a good job.
Round 5, number 153, Tariq Woolen, cornerback out of Texas, San Antonio.
Yes, I don't know that those guys start day one, but in a couple years, those are your 2 starting corners, I believe. I think they're both talented enough to be that in a couple years. And you're going to be feeling, you got your 2 your 2 tackles and your 2 starting corners for when they reach that Super Bowl window again.
Then you're getting them in the 4th and the 5th round.
So one draft to have all of that. A running back that's going to be the running back for a long time. Your two stalwarts at tackle, 2 stalwarts at corner, all in one draft. That's
pretty good.
It's a heck of a draft.
Round 5, number 158, Tyrone Smith, outside linebacker from Ohio State.
Yeah, I think he's more of a he's a great athlete. Unlike he doesn't have the floor that Mafe has, but maybe the same ceiling.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Like
Yeah.
he has the potential. The reason he's there in the 5th round,
but
the reason he's there in the 5th round is he still maybe has to add some weight. There's potential there to work with. Maybe he ends up being something.
all right, and then round 7, number 229, Bo Melton, wide receiver out of Rutgers. I think we're both pretty high on him.
I love Bo Melton.
Yeah, I like Bo Melton too. I think especially going here in the 7th round, that's great value for him.
And if I'm right about my theory that they're going to more of a 4 wide, open it up offense, he's the perfect kind of guy to have in one of those because he can line up in the slot. You can shift him to the backfield. You can have him do end rounds. You can have him do reverses. He did all that kind of stuff at Rutgers. He's really good at that kind of stuff. And he can be a special team player too, kick returns, punt returns. He could be a high-level one of those. I don't know what their situation is for that, but he can be a high-level one of those as well.
Round 7, number 233, Derek Young, wide receiver out of Lenoir-Rhyne. Do not know much about him.
Never watched a single minute of Leon Rhyme film or.
That might actually be the first time I've ever actually heard of the school. But I mean,
but we might even pronounce it that right.
Yeah, that's right. It might be like his favorite country singer.
Watch him.
I just wrote down the wrong information.
We just talked glowingly about all those players. Watch him be the biggest star of this whole draft.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get into their projected starters. Now, again, I want to clarify, I go off of projections, and I do only talk about the starters. I do not talk about the backups. Right now, quarterback that is projected, according to ESPN, is Geno Smith. I don't believe that that's going to be the case, although I don't know. I mean...
Look, I think on paper you can make the argument...
there is a genuine battle there.
Sure, I think you can make the argument that Geno Smith has accomplished more in this league than Drew Lock. And I think you can make the argument that if you're trying to win next year, Geno Smith might be the better pick. But if you're in a rebuild, and if I'm accurate that they're switching to a more open passing thing,
it does seem that way.
Then Locke is the better pick than Geno Smith.
Yeah,
Locke is a better fit for that offense, and he's a better fit for a rebuild than Geno Smith is in my mind.
I definitely agree with you on this, but I'll give you his stats: 704 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 42 rushing, and 1 touchdown in 4 games. So I think that they struggled. They struggled last year for whatever reason. Things were not working out. You know what I mean?
And I think that a lot of people liked what Smith did. They liked what he did when he came in, but he was
a game manager.
He's a game manager, and if you're to me, there's no future with Geno Smith as your starting quarterback, right? Like you have to. This is why I believe in the end that Locke will be the starter because you have to find out if Locke is the future, and if not, then you got to be ready to move on later.
Geno Smith.
Geno Smith's not it.
Yeah. All right. But I mean, when you look at it, regardless, they'll have a high level backup. I mean, there's not going to be much of a difference between their backup and their starter, no matter who. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the interesting thing about all that is, though, is like I see those two players as being extremely different
They are.
style of players.
They are.
So the kind of offense you're gonna have for one is gonna
That's
be
right.
completely different than the offense for the other.
That's right. That is interesting. I'm not sure how that works out.
Yeah.
Anyways, you're right. Running back, Rashad Penny, 119 yards, 6 touchdowns, 48 receiving. He was injured. He only played 10 games.
Okay, so he's a good running back. Sorry, Walker's better.
Yeah.
Like Rashard Penny, sorry to tell you, when you're a free agent, you're not going to be a Seahawk anymore.
Yeah,
Walker's
the guy that, like, not to the level of Najee Harris, but like Walker's one of the guys you watch and you just know he's going to be good. Like he can compete still at that high level.
I think he's a
at
different
the
running back
NFL.
than Najee Harris.
No, but
but
that's what I mean. Just like they can come into the league and play, and you know that he's not going to have a problem adjusting to that.
oh, I think he's going to be a top level running back from day one.
Absolutely.
I would be shocked if he's not. And I think Rashad Penny's days as the starting running back in Seattle are very, very limited if he makes it past preseason.
Yeah, and then wide receiver Tyler Lockett might be the first actual projected starter that starts.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many trade rumors about him too, and it still might make sense for them to trade him. But I would like to see them try. I'd like to see them give Locke at least a few games. Lockett.
Oh, yeah.
No, Locke with Lockett. I'd like to see Locke and Lockett lock it down together.
Yeah.
Sorry, couldn't help myself.
73 receptions, 1,173 yards, and 8 touchdowns is what he did last year.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, these guys are great wide receivers. We all know this. Wide receiver DK Metcalf, 75 receptions, 967 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And that's your second receiver.
Well, no, and it's also people were kind of disappointed the season he had, right?
Yeah, I know.
Because of what he did the previous year.
Yeah,
that seemed like a downgrade.
Look,
Those guys combined for 2,000 yards and 20 plus touchdowns.
both those guys are. I would just die to have both those guys on my team. As
It's a
wide
great
receiver.
duo.
It's just how
And so this is what I'm saying with Locke. If you give him those guys and he can't get it done, then you know you got to move on.
Absolutely. All right, wide receiver Freddie Swain, 25 receptions, 343 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then we'll just go on to also include Noah Fantonier, 68 receptions, 670 yards, and 4 touchdowns coming over from the Broncos via trade. And I think that's like you said. I mean, look, there's so many weapons there. He already is familiar with Noah Fant. That's going to be something that I think it definitely is set up for Locke to take over there as a starter. And Geno Smith would waste. I think it would be a waste of talent there in that wide receiver and tight end group, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is you need to know, like I said, you need to know if Locke's the guy, and because if Locke is the guy, then it makes sense to pay DJ Metcalf, and it makes sense to hang on to Lockett and Fant. If he's not the guy, then in this offseason,
is going to go a different direction.
in this offseason, maybe, then that means the rebuild's not going to be as quick.
Right.
So then in this offseason, maybe you look to move on from Metcalf and Lockett or both and bring in younger guys that's going to fit the window a little bit better.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I believe that Locke is going to beat out Geno Smith. I'm not sure that he's going to be the guy.
So let's give a little backstory. When he was a rookie in Denver, you thought he would be the guy.
Yeah.
You really liked what he did in
I
Denver.
did.
And then
I did.
Fangio shows up, and we all know post-trade, Fangio, there's a lot of stories that came out that Fangio wanted nothing to do with Locke.
There were things
he
that
didn't believe in him.
Yeah, there were things that Locke was doing even at the end of his first year that made me a little. I was pulling for him. I really did believe in him. But yeah, I mean, suppose you're right that it could be that coaching. There was a lot of things that I saw from the kid that was really concerning and worrisome.
Well, I think some of these guys that come from certain systems in college, you got to run a system close to what they were running in college to get the most out of them. And this is what I think. I think it's interesting because I think there's signs that maybe that's what they're going to do. Like there's signs that maybe they're going to move to 4 wide receivers, spread out the offensive line, and run something a little closer to what he ran in college, and see what he's got. I think the drafting of the 2 tackles makes sense. Hanging on to those wide receivers means that makes sense. Even drafting Walker over Penny. Penny is more of a between the tackles runner. Walker is a guy that can, where he excels is reading the holes quickly. He kind of is a little bit like Le'Veon Bell was, little Le'Veon Bellish, where he can kind of quickly analyze where the opening is and hit that hole fast. which is, this is what the Steelers did with Le'Veon Bell. They spread out 4 wide, let Le'Veon Bell be in the backfield by himself because he didn't need a lead blocker to open a hole for him. He could figure the hole on his own. I think Walker fits that. I don't know that Penny does. So I think there's like some signs there that they're moving in this direction, and they're going to give Locke a legit chance, is what it seems like to me.
Okay, we'll go. The offensive line is finished being made up. Left tackle Charles Cross, who's a rookie. Left guard Damian Lewis. Center Kyle Fuller. Right guard Gabe Jackson, and right tackle Jake Kurhan.
And then another draft pick as a bench player who's fighting to get his way up to the starting lineup down the road.
That's right. All right, and then let's go on to defense here. Left defensive end Shelby Harris, 49 tackles, 6 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass deflects, and unfortunately I did not rate. Where did he come from?
Is that the one from the Broncos?
I think it is. Oh yeah, that's right.
He's the one that the Broncos players were not happy that he left.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, he's a good player. He's got a high motor, too. I like him a lot. Nose tackle Al Woods, 50 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 3 pass deflects.
Yeah, I don't know about a lot about him.
Right defensive end Puna Ford, 53 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 pass deflect. I think they could definitely still use some help there up on the front. But linebacker Daryl Tyler, he was a rookie last year, 37 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflect. Especially for a rookie, that's good. Inside linebacker Jordan Brooks, 184 tackles, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, and 5 pass deflects.
Big fan of Brooks.
Inside linebacker Cody Barton, 37 tackles, 1 pass deflects. Linebacker Uchina Nwasu, 40 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interceptions, and 4 pass deflects coming over from the Chargers. That's a good amount of play there. I like the diversity.
And Mafe is going to fit in there somewhere.
Sure.
Even if he's a rotational piece, he's going to be on the field a lot. Even if he's a third, or he's going to take a job from one of those guys.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a solid linebacking core, though.
Especially for a young defense, like they're in that rebuild mode. Brooks, if that's what I'm thinking is, he's young, and a good player. The one guy's a rookie last year, so that's some young production. You add Mafe to that group, that's a pretty good young group.
All right, into the cornerbacks. Left cornerback Trey Bro, rookie last year, 10 tackles, 1 pass deflect. He was injured. He only played 5 games. Obviously, didn't get a lot of look at him. Jamal Adams, 87 tackles, 2 interceptions, 5 pass deflects. Also injured.
Now we know though when Jamal
Yeah.
Adams is on the top of his game, and he's young too. It's interesting because I think Jamal Adams probably is a little. I wouldn't blame Jamal Adams if he's a little frustrated. He thought he was being traded to a team that was going to be competing for Super Bowls, and now he's in the middle of a rebuild. But he could be the veteran of this defense through that rebuild into the next Super Bowl window, where he is the leader of a Super Bowl contending defense.
Yeah.
Like at the peak of his career. And I think and he's good enough if he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
Like there's a big if. I know one of the things people said was he doesn't have a lot of trade value because there's a big if about where he can come healthy. But when he's healthy,
he is a good player.
He's a great player.
All right. Free safety Quadre Diggs, 94 tackles, 5 interceptions, 7 pass deflects. And then the other cornerback, right cornerback Sidney Jones, the 4th, 66 tackles, 10 pass deflects.
And like I said, so I think they got 2 corners that are going to be pushing their 2 corners. They're deep at corner.
That depth in there.
They're deep at corner, and I think those 2 guys that got in the draft will push those other guys. Either that are going to raise their game, or they're going to take their jobs. So to me, that's a good secondary, a good linebacking core, and at least one good piece on the defensive line.
That's right.
So
I think they could still use just a little bit more help there on defense, but it does look like, especially like you pointed out, a lot of those players are young players. They got the young player in the draft that are going to move up into that defensively. So they're building, and it does look that way.
And they're going to have an extra second and an extra first next year. So they're going to have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds next year to add to that.
We've had 2 really, really good drafts in a row. Let's see what the quality of player coming out next year is. If it's anything like it's been the last couple of years, that's going to be fantastic to have those extra players in there.
So that's what I'm saying. Okay, so to me...
And if need be, they can go get themselves a good quarterback.
Well, yeah, they should have the ammo to trade up if they need to, or if they have a poor. If Locke isn't the guy, then they're gonna have a bad season. And this next year's class is supposed to be pretty good at quarterback, so they'll probably be able to get the quarterback in the draft and still have 3 more picks in that first, second round range.
And surround that quarterback with a very
talent.
good team right there.
So that, to me,
Because even offensively, like we just talked about that defensively, I think that they're definitely on the up and up there on defensively. They've added some great pieces. Offensively, we already know they're good to go. I mean, a lot of those players, like you said, with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Noah Fant, I mean, those are great players.
and you bring Walker into the
And-
running
and
back,
Walker
and he'll be a
Williams.
good running back for the next 6-7 years.
So yeah, I think it might be rough for a little bit. You know what I mean? I feel like it's going to be rough this year, in my opinion. I really do.
Well,
I don't really fully believe that Locke is going to show himself to be the guy. So I think you are going to have a rough year. But I think going forward, you're looking like you're moving in a good position.
It feels like a quick rebuild. And here, what's the other thing we talked about when we did the Rams video? Okay, that Rams window, right now they're the favorite, and they will continue to be the favorite as long as Matthew Stafford is still playing.
Yeah.
But how many years has he got left?
Yeah.
2, 3,
Yeah.
4 at the most?
So you're building at the right time.
So when this rebuild, when they hit, we're ready to compete. It should be about the same time that the Rams start to fall off.
Yeah,
And then we don't know what to think about Arizona.
And
We
you
don't
did.
know what to think about Trey Lance.
It would be a lot of young competition if you have to go out and get another quarterback into next year's draft. It would be a lot of young competition in that division for sure.
And here's the other thing, too. Let's say Locke isn't the guy and they do poorly, but they draft well again next year. You're probably going to have some free agent money. You know, this could be one of those teams like we've seen when a quarterback gets fed up with the modern NFL. As a quarterback gets fed up with his place, he forces his way out. You know, wouldn't it be strange if there was a quarterback forcing his way out so he could go to Seattle instead of the other way around?
Yeah, it does look like there's some good pieces there. I would like playing with, especially that wide receiving core, man. You throw that out there, I would be a happy guy at quarterback to be able to throw to those guys. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
So, bringing it back to what this video is supposed to be about, it's about the offseason. In my opinion, they crushed the draft.
I think so.
They crushed the Russell Wilson trade.
I agree.
If you have to rebuild, they seem to. I feel like they're on a quick rebuild, not a slow rebuild. So I think you got to give them high marks. One of the
Being
considering,
able to bring in the players on top of the draft picks,
Yeah.
it's just like so good.
yeah. So considering everything there is, the fact that there's so much competition in that division, the fact that Wilson wanted to move on, considering all of that, I think their GM did I think this was one of the better off seasons out there.
Yeah, I agree.
If you take everything into consideration.
Long-term goal.
Yeah, I mean, he could have, considering what they needed to do, it could have been done a lot worse.
Absolutely.
A lot worse.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
So, yeah, I think, kudos to them. And not a surprise. I mean, he built a Super Bowl contender before. I think that they could potentially be looking at building another Super Bowl contender just depending on the quarterback.
Sure. Well, thank you for joining us here at Lowry Sports Rhetoric. Thank you. If you got anything out of this content, give us a like, give us a subscribe.
And don't forget those comments. Tell us what you think. If you're a Seahawks fan like my Uncle Tom, do you like the fact that they did the rebuild? Are you upset that they moved on from Wilson even though he was asking to be traded? Do you think they should have forced his hand, made him play anyway? And what do you think? Did you like your draft as much as we did? Let us know what you think as a Seahawks fan, because we're always curious to have that feedback from the other fan bases.
All right. Thanks for giving us a watch, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.